Remember years ago, a bunch of people, maybe you, were complaining about 5G destroying the planet because millimeter wavelengths. Okay, well, as I told everybody, and everybody should have been able to look up from every link on every website talking about it, some of you refuse to look shit up, virtually all of what 5G is not millimeter wavelength. And when that turned out to be true, because people noticed, hey, it's missing the millimeter wavelength, just like every one of you were told that 5G is a network protocol that can work at any frequency grouping and a way of doing frequency hopping and stuff, but it doesn't have to be millimeter wavelength. Please look up what millimeter wavelength really is, because it's actually centimeter wavelength you're complaining about. But let's move on. When the evil thing didn't happen because people, either because all of you were squeaky wheels, crazy wheels, or not happy wheels, or because of reasons I'm going to bring up here, most of the 5G equipment just uses the lower frequency that was used originally by 4G and all the other networking things. Now, when this actually happened and became flat out fact that's not deniable because you have to work really hard to be in denial, guess what? Oh, a hurricane goes through, so therefore, somehow, miraculously, it's a weather modification thing, even though it doesn't do any of those things. Okay, so let's move on. Why did they put in the new towers? Because every single part of the country during COVID requested infrastructure improvements because we were all stuck at home and we all telecommuted. We all did work over the internet. This created a huge bunch of different markets. During the pandemic, people started using isolation society methods, and that killed off some businesses unless they adapted, but it all depended on communications working. So a lot of areas got a lot of government grants to upgrade communications equipment. Yes, some of you are scream typing right now. God help us, some of you actually have speech-to-text capability, and we hear you on the bus. Shut up. By the way, we're on the bus. We're hearing you from your apartment. So let's get the screaming out of the way. As of 2020, people on Reddit noticed that many Samsung 5G smartphones were missing some of the 5G frequencies. They had the mid-band 5G and low frequency, which is to say not millimeter, but lacked a 5G module, a specific module to do the frequency range, because it needs technically to use a different snowflake or fractal antenna than you already had. They're the same kind of antenna, just slightly different parameters, and or a new module be put in. In countries like, weird countries that would, be behind the curve like Korea, or South Korea, and the United States, most of the areas didn't have the millimeter band coverage, but they did 5G protocol. 5G protocol isn't snake oil, it's just a different protocol for how to handle the communications. It's a different way, and every time you do one of these fourth, third, or fifth generations, or sixth or seventh generations, you have to get the local government and local equipment to work with each other without screwing over older equipment, which means you have to avoid bands that would not be able to do it correctly. But because so much equipment could just be recycled into the other bands, that's why 5G was an advantage. You can mix and match the same telecommunications. That's why it worked. Now, again, repeating what I've said before and everyone learned. 5G, one even had a video. It has 5G signals, but they're at lower power. Yes, that was the whole motherfucking point, you troglodyte. The idea was to use a lower power signal and put a lot of transceivers really close together at very low intensity so you could get line of sight signals that if you're close to them, because you're in the middle right here, and here are the two, here are the two towers, and here you are in the middle, you only have to communicate 100 feet. You don't need the thing to put out 5 watt maximum. It can put out a couple of milliwatts. And that also means that any noise in the area is either not going to be heard because your signals are technically louder than the noise, but it's still low power, or if it's too noisy, it just shifts from the noise band over to another one and just works around it. The idea was to make them more reliable and use less electricity. That's why you're getting a week's worth of time on some of your cell phones, because they're using less power. But I don't want to hear but. Keep your farts to yourself. You're screaming about things that have been asked and answered literally 1,000 times if you're watching this video. 5G is not a plan to do mind control or any other bullshit. When people suddenly discovered, oh, it doesn't have a 5G 1mm module in my cell phone because either A, you didn't want to spend the additional $71 compared to the one that doesn't have it. It's a $70 upgrade. You can buy one of them on Amazon. It's just a module to plug into a laptop or computer. But the point is, the tech is different. It's different. It might use a wire antenna or a snowflake antenna like you find in a good smartphone. But the point is, it's a different set of chips and or a module. So people look in there and see what look like the same old chips. Yeah, because they're using the same frequencies. They're not using the evil 1mm band, which is actually 1 centimeter. Shut up, you're wrong. Don't even start with me. Which means the wavelength isn't 1mm. So areas that may not support full 5G just didn't include it because it was under-implemented. If you're in a certain city, New York, it didn't have full 5G because it didn't need it. It was a different set of protocols, more efficiently using what signals were available, so it wasn't anything happening that's a change in radio frequency spectrum. Period, full stop. It's a different way of communicating. It's equivalent to using a party line, but somehow encrypted, versus everybody getting their own phone line. Some of you might be old enough to know what a party line is. It's not what you think it means. Please don't type that. I already know you typed it. And there's a joke about your mom there. What are the frequencies that are not included? 26 gigahertz, 39 gigahertz, and 28 gigahertz for N258, N260, and N261 in that order. I don't know why they number them that way. I don't give a fuck. Ergo, it must be, according to at least one person, Project Bluebeam weather modification towers were put in place. Anything other than I was lied to 4 years ago or 5 years ago about 5G, and I need to grow a fucking brain cell or two extra. You have to put in the effort to find out 5G is almost exclusively a lower power signal. It is almost never higher power. The whole point was to have diversity reception and transmission. Yes, you're going to freak out on the word diversity. I'm deliberately triggering you. Some of you are triggered by words. And it was designed to make it to where it was almost impossible to have a bad connection. It also meant that if you had a bad connection from this tower, it'd switch to this tower, just like it always does. But since they're closer together, it could do it while you're running down the road on a car. It would create less dead spots. It would still fail once in a while, but a lot less often. And it would allow the systems to run at a lower power level, wearing out slower, lasting longer. And because it would dynamically change frequencies at your cell phone and also at the towers and cooperate with each other with a lot more availability, this meant that the equipment could tolerate breakages. Oh, one of the transceivers on 5th and Maple doesn't do, let's say, the 400 megahertz range, half a gigahertz, not millimeter, not even centimeter. Oh, well, it'll just switch to the next notch down of channelings? Yeah, until it really breaks, it isn't broken. And again, this would give you a wider bandwidth because you could use two antennas at the same time with two completely different frequencies, and the intensity would be about the same. And again, it could use lower power because it has less of a distance to transmit and receive. This is the equivalent to getting 5 feet away from somebody and talking in a normal volume level rather than getting half a mile away and using bullhorns. You're going to get clearer audio if you put them closer together, right? Well, you're going to get better signals if you're close together. This is extremely easy to check. Yeah, but I know some of you watched something, they said the exact opposite. Ignore the electronics engineering technician and computer geek, hacker, if you will, that does this stuff, that knows about this stuff. This was also a similar system. Yes, this was poppycock to hell in Portland. We were going to set up a Wi-Fi network that did the same thing so everybody could use internet-based phone communication and eliminate a lot of companies. They didn't like that, and they got into doling out the helper money to make sure that didn't happen. And it turned into, oh, well, we'll do this as a citywide internet infrastructure that ended up just being us volunteers doing it and them not paying us for reimbursement like this. It was a scam. Okay, 5G is actually in place. It is a network protocol or a phone protocol or whatever. It's a way of communicating differently. And again, it's a lot like not screaming a mile away from each other when you can stand next to each other and talk at a normal volume. You know, like in a coffee shop where you can have a conversation and there's a bunch of noise in the area, but you can still communicate. Yeah, this worked better. It will work better. And yeah, you could put it on every telephone pole and every light pole and blah, blah, blah. And it would be cheaper because they wouldn't fix it 80% of the time. They don't need to because Literally, the next light over's got a communication hookup. It also uses your battery less because you don't have to go into high power mode to communicate 1,000 feet away or 5,000 feet away, depending on how power required it is. And yes, I'm going to say this, that's why some people in airplanes on a specific date, everybody in America will remember, were able to hear and communicate via cell phone because they were less than a certain height above the ground and they could get cell phone communication for a few seconds. They were going under the speed of sound. Speed of sound is around 1,000 feet a second. They were going around 500 feet a second or something. So they were able to get a call through and get a blip or a ping or even say something and have it actually hopscotch on a set of cell towers because those were out in the middle of nowhere, so they have to be higher power. Obviously, if you put the antennas closer together, they can be lower power. Does that mean there's a total more power used? Not really, because you're not wasting that RF communication sending a signal up in the air. It's more splayed out on the ground. Now, those of you out there that are triggered by 5G won't look up how this works, or at least how it worked back in 2020 when people noticed this. And why are people bringing it up as of October or September of 2024? Because it will get views. They get paid per view on their channel. Yeah, they say, well, I don't get any money out of it. Yes, you do. Shut up. People are promoting this. No, the U.S. government nor anyone else caused the hurricanes. Every one of you believe that every time a Democrat's in charge of anything, or even in the neighborhood, you blame it on the Democrats or the Republicans or whatever. We do not have the ability to control the weather. Not like you think. We can affect things like we can make it rain more than it should. Okay, we can cause a monsoon season to be longer, but we can't control when the monsoons happen. And attempts to do this stuff, yes, during Vietnam, had the result of us finding out we don't know how to do it. The best we can offer is cloud seeding, and that's about it. No, it's not done with radio signals, HARP, Project Bluebeam, or whatever you want to bring up. By the way, Project Bluebeam is not about weather modification. Where did this come from? The idiot who posted that video. Anyway, so why am I doing this video? It's really, really simple. Someone asked me, what's with the 5G-enabled cell phones being missing either chips or modules, and what has this got to do with Bluebeam? And I only found one person making that statement, but if you find one, there's going to be a rat's nest of more. And again, if your political bias decides whether or not you actually listen to meteorologists and people who study the weather, or electronics engineering technicians or ham operators who tell you whether or not you're stupid or not, if your political bias is what you use to defend yourself against someone saying you've made a mistake, please learn from it, you're going to keep making mistakes and not learn from any of them. No, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't give a damn. So if you're watching this video and you feel insulted, and if it hurt your feelings, good. Go look it up. And don't start commenting below to prove me wrong by just repeating something you heard someone else say. You too can look this up. You do not have to stay ignorant. Dumb phones also can use 5G. 5G is just another way of communicating. The 5G millimeter wave band includes all these high frequencies. And I'd like to point out again, when people said the world was going to come to an end because millimeter wave is dangerous, and then you find out it's not doing it, the first thing someone should say is, oh, they didn't implement it, we won. Instead of saying, oh, we won, therefore there's something sneaky going on. And the towers have the ability, or they don't, to do these other frequency groups. 5G was sold as a way of communicating, not what frequency it's on. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.